welcome to another Mr. Beta Pipe video, and this one's a little bit different insofar as this is part 3 of the perfect HF100, and in this one we're going to try and sort out both the pitch quality issues and the hi-fi audio, or lack thereof. At the moment this is playing back the linear audios. This is just the standard audio that's in a normal Betamax machine you'd be listening to, and see that's coming through fine. Now with Beta Hi-Fi, I mean, you can see the lights on, so it's detecting there is Beta Hi-Fi content, but it's quiet. There is nothing there. If I switch this on, switch the Beta Hi-Fi on, you can see it drops straight away, and there is nothing at all. There's not even a crackle. Yeah, and obviously we've got new heads on this as well, so we know they're good. Now, one thing that is interesting is I am getting sort of noise bars appearing on the image now, and I've tried a couple of tapes, and this is common to them all. So I'm obviously getting some sort of distortion coming in there somewhere, possibly a capacitor, but I do have another theory, and the theory is, and I've had this before on another machine, and it was amazing how the change made the difference, is this has the later RP17 panel, and these have these boards added to the RP17, and that has a really great sticky pad insulating it from the main PCB. And knowing what C9s and HF950s are like for pads going sort of becoming conductive with age, I just wonder if that's a lot of the problem. Just so you know, this section here, this is for the video side of it. This side here is for the hi-fi audio, and this here is the regulator. This is a 5-volt regulator circuit, these two transistors and related components. There's a fusible resistor. So just sort of point that out. I mean, that's fairly irrelevant at this stage, but I do wonder what we'll find when we check that. Now, I did, just as an experiment, I swapped the boards out. This is from another machine, obviously of a similar generation, and I did get some Beta Hi-Fi, and the pitch quality was much better. But that being the case, well, you could argue I could put this in and then do a line, realign on that. But I want to keep the original board. This is a really nice machine. I want to keep it as original as possible. It deserves it. So what I'm going to do is we're going to take that, drop that board, do some tests, just do some checking really. But the first thing I'm going to do is actually remove that additional board, the modification board, and we'll put some new pads underneath it, and just see if that makes any difference. I'd just be really interested to see if that's enough to get it going. These noise bars that are occasionally appearing, this is ringing a bell with me, and I think it's something to do with the video circuit rather than the head amp, the RP17 board. So, but we'll see. We've got all that to come. So, with that, let's crack on. Okay, so let's try and get this board off the RP11 panel, and it's probably not going to be easy. I just wonder if I use... Now, interestingly, that's the locating. So that test point there is actually just a locating pin for that board. which is fair enough. But it does have, oh gosh, and they're not nice. You can see that. You can see the sticky pads underneath, and they have gone really very, very solid. So, and this glue is fairly easy to separate. Once you get it going, pretty okay. So I'm just wondering how easy this is going to be to get off, because usually it does break apart. You can see it's trying to, but yeah, it's not going to be great doing this. Ultimately, I don't care too much about removing all of this. Obviously, it's onto the top of the PCB here, so that's fine. So that's actually pretty clean now. I'm not overly worried about getting it spotless. Like I say, it will have no effect on the performance of the board. I do have some of these non-conductive 3M pads. So I'm going to stick it down with those, and I don't think I'm going to do anything with the glue. I'm just going to leave the glue as is, and just rely on the pads holding the board. I may change my mind depending on how well this performs, and ultimately this is sticking down something that is uneven, which is not really ideal, but I may have to do some repairs on that board. I don't know yet, so that should be enough just to get us by, and allow us to test it. In theory, I don't need to put anything just to test it, but still, let's do it. And that will go through that test point, line that up. Yeah, it's not great. So yeah, what I will do is remove the glue and probably use some hot glue, to be honest, just to glue that down. Now the other thing before I test this I want to do is these resistors are also on using those pads, and this capacitor as well. So I'm going to just replace those. They just become so conductive and might not make any difference at all, but if they're done, I know that I'm not fighting against sort of an issue with dodgy pads. So resistors. I'm hoping I'll just reuse the old tape, which might not be the best thing to do, to be fair, but let me use the old tape because it'll stick nicely to the new adhesive. And goes there. So I suppose we ought to give it a test. Okay, so testing this, it's not made any difference whatsoever. So that was quite pointless, really. But it's really good to get that out of the equation, and yeah, it's well worth doing and well worth checking for. So I suppose the next thing is to actually diagnose this board. I've done a few checks, and I can actually see this board is working pretty well, to be fair. And I'm picking up both hi-fi and what I would expect with the oscilloscope of some of these. I haven't checked all of them. The main reason I didn't check all of them was because I thought I'd just check the voltage of the 5-volt rail here, and it was a little bit high, which is fine, but the 9 volts in was actually really low. It was sort of like 8 volts. And so I checked on the power supply, which I thought I'd done, but maybe I didn't, I don't know. So I checked the 9-volt rail, and the 9-volt rail was actually at about 8.5 volts. So I readjusted it to 9 volts, and here it was at about 8.5 volts. But what I noticed on the picture, it was starting to get really noisy with noise bands, and also I was losing colour. It was getting that bad. So my initial suspicion in part 1 that it's probably going to be a capacitor, I may well be right, and I am now suspecting that on the signal board I am going to find possibly a bad capacitor. So obviously the rail's being dragged down as it's going through the various sort of fusible resistors, capacitors and whatever, so it's getting dropped as it goes from one board to the next. But I mean, probably I should check the circuit diagram, to be honest, and just see where the 9-volt rail, sort of how it goes through the various boards to get to here, and where indeed I may have a problem. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to drop the signal board, and we'll take a look. Just before I do actually lift this panel back into position, I have actually glued it. I was considering just leaving it floating about for now, because chances are I might have to do some more work on this panel. But when this is lifted up, you can see it is really close to the real table, and I don't want that touching, especially as there is a little bit of electronics there as well. So I've glued it back in. A little bit of yellow still left in my glue gun, even though I've put clear in the back of it. So it's yellow, but that's fine. I cleared away most of the existing glue as well. I didn't do a very good job here at all on this side, but this side's actually down to the PCB. So there's a good bond there, and with the new adhesive pads under there as well, I'm sure that'll be fine. So let's put this back in place and crack on. Done some quick checks on this board, and I can't find anything actually really very wrong with this. I mean, the key thing to look for is sort of any brown marks underneath any of the caps, which is a good sign that they've been leaking. But checking the board through and sort of confirming with the circuit diagram where any capacitors potentially could be loading down the 9-volt rail, there are none. I mean, literally, I don't see any reason why this board necessarily should create the problems I'm having. I'm very much of the opinion, and this is just a gut reaction, that it probably is a power supply. So there are a couple of caps on the 9-volt supply, I think there's 3 actually, that could potentially be causing issues. So what I'm going to do is remove the power supply again and take a look, and I'll just change them. I mean, I'm not a fan of blanket changing caps, but I think in this case it might not be a bad idea to actually just swap out some of these, put them on the tester, see what they're like, the old ones, and hope that that probably will do the trick. But it's just really odd, just very odd behaviour in some ways. How it's, well, I've got no hi-fi audio, so yeah, let's do that. That's a good plan. I should have recorded removing this because it's actually really easy. 2 screws there. See the usual Sony arrows pointing to what needs to be removed. And there's a screw down here. Then there's a screw here. And then you've got 2 screws, one here, one here. And that removes the whole unit, wholesale, out of the machine. And I'm just going to check actually. Yeah, I did change the these 2 caps here. They need changing regardless, because if they blow, they take the 2 transistors, and they are not that easy to source. Well, they're quite expensive. I mean, they probably are equivalents, but yeah, it's not great. So, for the sake of changing those to 4.7 microfarad bipolar, they are bipolar, so don't stick standard 4.7 microfarad capacitors in there. 10 volt they're rated at, and I put 16 volt bipolar, good quality capacitors in there, because you can make up a bipolar if you're really desperate, but I like to do it properly if I can, relatively properly. So yeah, so let's remove the board and check some of these caps out. Board's out, and just how you remove that. 4 screws, and then 2 screws on the back, and it comes out. It looks a lot worse than it actually is, so that's cool. So I did actually check some of the caps when I changed those to bipolar caps in the primary side of the power supply, and these have checked fine. But I think what I will do is change the 3 caps on the 9 volt side of the power supply, and we'll see how we go. I mean, yeah, still very dubious as to what the fault is with this machine. So I ended up changing quite a few capacitors in the power supply, in fact most of them. I just thought, well, I'll just blanket change them. So majority of these, couple of the originals are still there. I did find 2,200 microfarad, 16 volts. That one was actually leaking. Have I still got it? So yeah, and this one had leaked. Probably just about make out where it's leaked there. Tests absolutely fine on the meter, and but obviously it's not good. I actually changed a few in here as well, and yeah, that's all good. So as a result of that, I've now got rid of the noise bars, the sort of interference from the power supply, obviously as a result of that capacitor. But I now have a new problem, and that's the cap stand running fast. I might get some sound in a minute. But yeah, it's just running fast. I can, if I increase the back tension, it will pick it up. Maybe suggest where on the AC head. So here there it's running fast. Yeah, it's not great. Fix one thing, get two more problems sort of thing. But yeah, so I do still have issues as well. I still haven't got hi-fi stereo. And I still have darklies off very bright white contrasty images. So yeah, I'm getting quite a few issues with this. I've checked the pinch roller and it runs on nicely. It's always a good thing to check, because the bearings can go bad, and if you flick the pinch roller, it doesn't run on, you know the bearings are bad, and that will cause all sorts of problems with the sort of tape path alignments, and go all over the place. But this one's fine, really, really good actually. Tape path is clean, clean that right at the beginning, and yeah, it's perfect. So I'm guessing I'm getting sort of low pickup from the ACE head. I need to get in there and scope it basically, but because I've got 3 faults now, no hi-fi audio, bad picture with view heads, and a capstan issue, it's almost where do you start? But I think what I'm going to do is I've got a spare board, a spare signal board, so I'm going to swap that over and just see if that changes things. It may improve things, might not. Obviously the alignment will be wrong, but it won't be that far out. So yeah, I just think change it just to eliminate that board. I do have a bit of a feeling that maybe that board has something on it that's causing all of these problems, and yeah, so let's do that next. One thing I did nearly forget to say is I did check the alignment of the head, more to see if it had been fiddled with. Obviously this machine was taken out of service for some reason, and the best machines, when they're taken out of service, it's because they're no longer required. It's not because they have a fault, but invariably it's usually because they go faulty, and there's like, oh, we'll go VHS or whatever. So with this one, none of the screws have been fiddled with, except this one, which is the alignment of the sort of tilt of the head. And this has been played with. Now I have adjusted it, or just gone from one end to the other, and it's made a difference at all. So yeah, that's cool. But yeah, it's obviously, I'm getting to the original fault with this machine, and the what I've been fixing so far has been sort of additional to, or obviously with the heads, they were very worn, but I just think this machine was written off just because it was assumed the heads were worn and there was a capstan knock issue. So yeah, it's going to be a fun one, this one, and we might need a part 4 as well. Okay, so I ran it for a while with a tape in and with the issue, and I was finding it's running at about ×2 speed. It doesn't matter what I do with the back tension, increase it, whatever, and yeah, it's just basically running fast. Now initially, when the fault occurred, when it was cold or you take it out of standby, it would run for 1 or 2 minutes fine, and it would gradually speed up. Now it's running 2 times speed pretty much all the time, right from cold. Even if I switch it on, power it on, press play, it's 2 times speed. So yeah, this is just an indication of what it's doing. And you can see it spills out tape. So that's actually something to watch out for, because there is nothing wrong with the real tables, I don't think. Let's put in the blank cassette. Grease is the word. And press play. You can see pretty good torque there. You know, it's fine. The spindle is good. It's not really a problem there, although I probably could do with servicing that, to be fair. But there is good take up. So yeah, I mean, you can probably just make out there, because there's a bit of contamination now at the bottom of the capstan, that it is spinning much faster than it should. And we can make it out from the, yeah, you see the pinch rollers flying around there. So, the good news is that it turns out that my Brit tape is actually now pretty much totally worn out. I do think that is a Super Beta recorded tape as well, with hi-fi audio. Just because when I put it in a HF950, it plays fine still. It's pretty good if I put it on Super Beta. But obviously the bandwidth is that much wider, that much higher. So yeah, it's but I've tried it on a couple of standard betas, and it's tearing something chronic. So I just think that tape is pretty worn. And one thing I have noticed as well with those Maxell HGX tapes is the amount they shed. I've got this one here, which I'm testing with, and this is probably the same thing. This is done in Super Beta, and probably because it's from the same batch that I bought ages ago. And yeah, they just shed terribly. So I'd be interested to hear any comments on that. If you've had a similar experience with those Maxell tapes, so it's the HGX range, which are generally, I've always rated them as being very good, but obviously they're getting quite old now. So with that, one thing that springs to mind is this is very similar to another HF100 that I repaired quite a while ago, and I did a video on it, I'm pretty sure, for Russell. I was doing exactly the same thing. It turned out to be a transistor, which I can't remember which one that was off the top of my head, so I'll probably watch that video, and I'll put a link and put a card up now. I'll put a link in the description, and I'll also put, for all of you who use smart TVs or Rokus that don't display these two things, a link to the name of the video, so you can search it. And just have a look at that, just to compare it to part 4 of this video, because quite honestly, I've done so much to this. I've spent so much time on it. And I'm pretty confident, like I say, because of the tape issues, the actual video side of it is good. I need to test it, obviously, but we've got hi-fi audio problems. There isn't any hi-fi audio, and obviously we've got the capstan issue, so we need to fix the capstan issue first before we can test for the hi-fi side of it, get that working, and double check that the actual video side of it is working well. So I'm going to fix some other stuff, and take a break from the HF100. You know, I tend to find a break is as good as a holiday with these things, especially as there's no panic to get it going. I mean, it's different if it's for repair. Yeah, I'm going to leave it here so for now. So thank you very much for watching. Keep an eye out. We've got an F30. We've got an SL-1700 coming up soon, which will be absolutely fantastic. We've got a TT-F1 plus SL-F1 combo to look at, which is a lot of fun as well. I've had some really difficult machines lately with sort of lots of issues, and I have to say it's really just got to me a bit. You know, I got that twitch on the eye, you know, the one you get when it's just like, oh my goodness. But yeah, see you in another video. Farewell for now.